Welcome to the Coffee Talk Podcast. This is intended for informational purposes only and not to be used as a primary basis for investment decisions. Consult your financial professional before making investment decisions. Shannon Ross is a registered representative and MBA of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse Financial offers securities and advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisories Incorporated, member FINRA and SIPC. Shannon is CEO and managing financial partner of Lighthouse Financial. Cambridge and Lighthouse Financial are not affiliated. And now, here's your host, Shannon Ross.
Well, welcome everyone. We are in mid-December. We have our little holiday decorations today because we are back in the studio, and I have a very special guest this morning, my beautiful co-host today, because April couldn't make it today. So we had to kind of pivot, and this wonderful woman is usually on my emergency call list for multiple things. And so this morning, about an hour before recording, I asked her to join me, and we have my good friend, lifelong friend and coworker, Michelle, here this morning. Welcome,
Good morning.
welcome.
Good
You've listened to the
morning.
show
I
every
listen
week.
to it
So
religiously.
now you get to be on the other side of the fence
I know.
today.
You and April make me laugh every week, and I love that about y'all.
Well, I'm so Michelle is on the Copy Talk team. She's on my Lighthouse team. As you can tell, audience, I hire basically those friends that I consider family, because if I'm going to work a lot, I might as well be with people I love.
And I love that as well.
So Michelle is one of those. So she helps me out at Lighthouse. She helps here on the show. And what's so really special in my heart is because we're finishing up Generosity today. And honestly, Michelle is one of the most generous people I've ever met in my whole life. And our history goes back over 30 plus years. I mean,
I was 9 years
you
old.
You were young. We were both young. So how I met Michelle was when my mom had passed away. I was a young teenager and needed some supervision here and there. And so Michelle moved in with my dad and I to help me out, to kind of be his eyes and ears a little bit, and just to be a good friend from a season of just kind of struggling and pain. And so I had driven out several other tribes before Michelle came to live with us, because they weren't very nice or kind. So whatever, they did their best. But when Michelle came, she was like I call her like my angel, my guardian angel, because she was so kind and so sweet. And as a teenager, I was a pretty good teenager, but I definitely pushed limits on things. And Michelle
What teenager doesn't?
was always so sweet. I remember so many times calling and be like, yeah, I think I'm going to miss curfew tonight. And there was no such thing as cell phones or Life 360 or
That's right.
so.
And she'd usually ask me to pick her up after curfew.
And you were always so sweet to me. So we've been dear friends for a very long time. You feel like more like family, not really a friend.
She's my sister,
Yes.
and she was great, and she's awesome. And now I'm here, and she can take care of me.
I know. So now we get to take care of each other.
That's right.
Because our life seasons has changed quite a bit.
I know.
So I'm thank you for saying yes, first of all, for today.
Mm-hmm.
And, what also brought you to mind this morning was we are finishing up our 4-part series on generosity.
Yes.
And you have grown up kind of in the nonprofit world, working for various organizations and churches and what have you. And I think, you've done such an amazing job of not only donating, we talk a lot about financial donations, but we also talk a lot about time donations.
Yes.
And so that's where I want to focus today, is not only kind of how we go about choosing a charity or organization to partner with, because I think it's important to have a little bit of a process, because they're not all the same.
Yeah.
And so we'll give some tips there today, and we'll tell you some personal stories of like how we choose who we give to, time and talents, and maybe even monetarily. So with that, before we get started, I always like to ask, what's your favorite Christmas carol, since Christmas is right around the corner?
Oh my goodness. What a great question. Oh my gosh, we are Christmas music freaks, and we've been listening for 2 months now. I love Silent Night, but then, of course, I like all of the jingle bells and
the happy, like upbeat ones.
The happy
Yeah.
ones. We go caroling and sing a lot. So, oh gosh, I listen to so many. We're big Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby,
Nice. That's
White
what April
Christmas.
said. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, we watch those movies and sing those songs. So
That's
those
awesome.
warm
Well,
my
you are
heart.
coming over to my house on Saturday this
Yeah.
week, and we are doing a big cookie bake.
I know, we
So
are.
we have a long list of Christmas
We
cookies
are.
to make. And I'm glad
Yes.
you're coming because I don't have that many recipes that you have. So we both grew up in Pittsburgh. And so in Pittsburgh, cookies
Are it.
are an art.
They
I mean,
are.
even at weddings, there's always a cookie table.
That you
that
take
people might
cookies
not
home.
realize
You
that
don't
you-
even
yeah.
eat them there. They give you
I mean,
boxes
hundreds
to take them
and
home.
hundreds
It's
of
crazy.
cookies at every wedding.
It's crazy.
So at Christmas, that kind of comes into play
Yeah,
too. So I'm
it
excited
does.
to have kind of you
I
as my
know.
ringer because usually I'm
oh,
kinda
she's
sad.
I'm gonna whip her into shape.
I'm
and
excited.
We're gonna be busy.
I'm very excited. So with that, as we kind of wrap up the series, I know we've been talking about kind of the benefits of giving, why it helps us, but more so why it helps others. That's easy, but also there's a return in exchange. Even mental health, physical health, overall happiness, satisfaction, those kind of things. Because when you're pouring yourself out for others, sometimes your own struggles can minimize a little bit and not because they tend to want to take us over whenever we're going through difficult seasons, difficult times.
And we all go through those.
Oh, it's-
you can have
yeah.
all the money in the world
No
or
doubt.
no money at all.
That's right.
People need people, and they need us to be generous with each other,
Yeah.
just with our time.
Absolutely. And to be a listening ear and not, not always be running around 100 miles an hour. And so the last show we had another Lighthouse coworker on,
Yeah.
Lisa Malik, who is my CFP at Lighthouse, and she is one of my financial advisors, and she was spending time on donor advised funds, which is, just kind of another way if you are a financial giver, another way to kind of ramp it up if you want to give large amounts to multiple organizations and kind of simplify the whole process. So that was super helpful. So today, for those who don't need a fund of their own, this is more, I think, where most of us fall, is just how to choose a charity. Because we've all seen different scenarios play out where, millions of dollars were given, and then you really don't know where it went. I remember the earthquake in Haiti several years ago, and how much money was raised, and how today Haiti's really in no better shape.
Right.
And so, I think people, had their hearts out for that nation, but because of it was poorly executed and there was poor organization and who knows else what. And Haiti tends, there's been a lot of historical corruption in that country. And unfortunately, you can't really, we still go there. We're involved with charities there. And you can't see a whole lot of where that infrastructure and money went, which is heartbreaking. And so, we want to educate our listeners that if you're going to donate precious things like your time, like your skills, like your, dollar bills, you want to make sure that you're looking for the right things and making sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. Because some of these things, like anything else, can be a little hidden, a little hard to find. And it's just making sure you have the right tools to know where to look. So before we get to some of the tips, Michelle, because obviously you are so generous and you are so generous and intentional. And I think that's what always sticks out to me about you is your intentionality about things. And so when you've gone through your process of where to spend your time, how to, give of yourself, kind of what's important to you when you consider those things?
Yeah, so in our family, again, we are one of those families. We've had money and we've not had money in different seasons of our life, as many of us, especially in the culture that we're living in right now, is their giving is so important. And financial giving is important, and we should always do that, and we have done that. But for us and our family, we always have kind of chosen not only to be able to give financially, whether that's large or small, but how can we plug into that organization? We've usually gone local with a lot of our giving, just because we were so aware that not only did we want to give financially, we wanted to give of ourselves. And we wanted to be responsible, because sometimes giving, what we gave, it was a sacrifice at times. So we wanted to make sure that that money was being well used and we trusted the people that we were giving to. So whether it be our local church, a lot of times it was our local church, and we would do that regularly. But there were ministries within the church. I think one of the ones that we would do would be Compassion, and that's one that's like a national
Compassion International,
ministry,
right?
And it's rated well, and we knew that the funding would be well used, but we were able to write to the individual that we sponsored.
Yeah.
And that was not just something that we took lightly. We would write to them, and we would send them pictures, and they would write to us. And so my kids could really understand kind of what was going on with them and how it was helping them and how important it was. And we would do that, and that was beautiful. And then they would grow up, and we would get another kid. So that was something that was, maybe it's $30 a month.
Sure.
And we could do that. And the other thing is youth ministry. That was something that was really, really near and dear to our hearts. And not only could we give of our money for a kid to go to camp or just do an event, Chris and I could really just hang out with the kids, and we could be a leader, and we could go to those camps as well. So we knew our money was being well used.
Yeah,
so that's kind of what we would do, is we always thought that it was important to follow up. And just recently, our family has been given to very generously financially for some reasons. And my daughter and Ava and I were just sitting down, and we were talking about, okay, what do we have to do? Because there's some people who obviously could use some love and some of our time and even some of our finances.
Yeah.
So we just reached out, because there are a million people even around you that if they share their stories, you'd be surprised that they could use some encouragement this season.
Well, and the need is everywhere.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it is everywhere.
Yeah.
I think as COVID continues, as it doesn't let up, people are weary. People are at their end. I don't think in my lifetime I've ever seen so many just on edge as I've seen right now. And maybe because I have an adult pair of eyes and I'm not a kid anymore.
Absolutely.
But the need is certainly great. And I love what you said about investing in our youth. I'm a big believer in that. One of the organizations that we have gotten heavily involved with over the past decade was called Heartwork, and it was all based around, I really like 2-for-1 charities. So like if I donate, it's not just helping one side of the fence, it's actually multiple sides of the fence. And so it was a really neat premise of investing in programs for high school teens to do different sacrificial campaigns. So they would raise funds for widows and orphans that they would go and donate and build, but it would be investing in the high schoolers to do this. So you're not only just investing in, it eventually gets to help widows and orphans in our country and others, but you're investing in a generation coming up in our country who are not necessarily, they don't know how to give, or they're so busy again in their own environment, in their own self kind of propelled advertising world, that it was an awesome concept of investing in them, teaching them why giving is important, why sacrifice is important.
I love that.
All those things, and then watching that turn into something that they could then tangibly do in another country or in our country for those falling on hard times. And so that was a super unique charity at the time that we were super passionate about, and as an example. So there's a lot of them out there
and I think that is so important. I think, again, as adults and when you have kids, you don't want to just train them to just send a check, because they need to know where that check is going and how it's going to, and that money we're responsible for. We have a responsibility to be good with the money that we give away. And so we would always say, like, if we gave to missionaries, we would go visit that country with one of our kids. We knew it was important for them to see a third world country and see how other people live and see why we're giving to that, so that they could understand what things are like, not just here in America, but in a different country.
Yeah. And I love what you said about involving in the ministry behind that, because I think there's some really good articles when helping hurts. And I think sometimes Americans, they get caught up in this, and they have good intention. They have good heart.
Right, absolutely.
But because they don't connect with the cause behind it, and it's not a kind of long-term commitment, they'll spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to just go visit somewhere for a week or what have you. And again, I understand why people do it. It's not necessarily a bad place to start, but it's almost, what it's called when helping hurts is almost like just poverty tourism.
Yes.
So you're just going and looking and seeing, and it's still all about you and your changed heart. And yes, your heart can change, but what are you going to do long term?
Absolutely.
And so it's not just about going on a trip. It's partnering with that organization long term.
And you're
kids
not
along,
staying at a 3-star hotel. You're staying
absolutely
with a family.
Absolutely.
And
it
really
is
important.
impactful. And I love like the youth aspect of it. So when I was in high school, we took a group of kids, and I was one of them, to Haiti.
Yep.
Back when there was, no cell phones. I mean, our parents had to be communicated with by ham radio that we had made it.
God bless your family for letting you go.
I know. I mean, it was a little risky. I mean, we got, there was some compromising situations, but we were all safe. But I look back at that picture of all of us who went, and we had to fundraise. We had to construct a building program. It wasn't just about going, it was about what we were going to leave as an impact in that community. And I look at those truckload of kids from that original trip, and they did this for, years and years after us, but we were the first to try it because it was new back then. It was a new concept. And so when we went, I look at that truckload of kids, and how many of those teenagers are now in either ministries or nonprofits, or it did mold and shape them.
The entire world,
absolutely,
with microloans
and missionaries in orphanages, both in Haiti and in other places. So it's just so impactful. And it's continued. And the ministers we went with are still there today. I mean, 35 years later, they're still building infrastructure. The orphans that we built are now adults running the orphanages. I mean, it's usually using nationals on the ground, really investing in the long term.
Right.
And that's when
Empowering
really
them.
helping helps.
That's right.
Because you're committed to making generational changes and leveraging people who are on the ground there, both native and non-native, to see those impacts. So it's just been such a neat, and I'm glad my dad said yes, because I work on my own heart of what I allow because it's hard to let your kids experience
somewhere.
and go and you're not there, and
absolutely,
and I know because I went, I'm like, oh, I know what can go on, and it's a little scary, but it makes such a difference. And so I love that you said that about just, when you can take kids along, when you can partner in a cause longer term. It's not just a drop in the bucket.
We all have our own stories.
Yeah.
So your mother passed away from cancer. That's one of Shannon's stories. So giving to cancer might be something that might be important to her. I don't think it's rocket science picking what things are important to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a ministry. My father passed away from dementia and Alzheimer's. So of course I'm interested in helping people that are helping people in that way.
Right. Yeah.
So again, I think it's really important to just be in touch with your story and know what is on your heart and where you're supposed to give, because I think that's the beautiful thing is we all have something to contribute, and when it's personal to us, we're in it. We're more committed, not only financially, but also to help. And we have a heart for people that are hurting, maybe in the same way that we have hurt. So I think that's really important. And again, it's a learning tool always for our families and our kids and our grandkids.
I love that, to connect it to your story, because it has to have a personal connection.
Yes, absolutely.
What have you been touched by? What have you been impacted by that you want to maybe help prevent someone else and ease their similar journey, or what be it? And I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that emotional draw. You have to have that emotional connection.
Right.
And because it's personal.
And it gives purpose to your pain.
Yeah.
Is a lot of times you want to give is it gives, and it keeps it in perspective that this isn't going to tear you down or break
Yeah.
you. It can be something that can be used for good, and there can be good that comes out of very difficult things.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that. And we wanted to give some other tips because again, it's about your story, it's about a personal connection. So once you have that, it's then, you pick kind of the category of where you want to get involved. And then I think it's important to do some due diligence of which one of those organizations. Because in most areas, there are several choices. And so I do believe that they all have good intentions and they have good hearts behind their causes. But part of that assessment is to know who's being efficient in their operations so that you know that your time or money is being used and maximized. And I think that's the key. And there's been so many organizations that have helped kind of with this accountability process and rating process and not to kind of condemn any of those charities out there, but to keep them accountable of what things they should be striving for in terms of, one of the main ratings that are out there that you can find and should look at is the program percentage that what percentage of their total expenses goes to the charitable programs. So they kind of split between charitable programs, like if it's for, say, an orphan organization or an orphanage, how much of every dollar given goes towards food, shelter, education, like key core programs versus overhead, fundraising,
salaries,
management, salaries, those kind of things, which aren't bad.
Mailing.
Yes. It takes money to run them. I totally get that. But what's interesting is, so this is from Charity Watch, which is a great organization of I think they have a very comprehensive process in how they rate organizations. But for them, their kind of benchmark is any organization that's rated an A or A plus give 75% or more in their program dollars. So they are only spending 25% or less to run the organization. So for every dollar given, 75 cents goes towards the actual cause and only 25 cents remains for the overhead pieces.
Right.
Now, and you can, if you do some homework, and I'm not going to call any out, but if you do some homework, there are some organizations that their overhead is 40, 50%.
Right.
And that's just not very efficient. They could do better. And so I like that places like Charity Watch give us insight on that.
Absolutely.
Because I think 10 years ago, no one knew the difference.
And all you have to do is really Google the organization and do the charity rating.
Yeah.
And it will come up because they have to disclose that.
Yeah, they do. They have to even disclose like what they do with your information. And what their private, because privacy policies have become more into play more and more. Because we all know, and we kind of joked, I think, a couple shows ago, where sometimes you donate to one organization and then you somehow get on the mailing list for 50 more that have really no relation. So similar to retailers.
And it kind of irritates
They
you.
can sell your information if you don't know their privacy policy. So it's important, I think, just to take a look, like, do they have a policy of no sharing or an opt-in policy or an opt-out policy to know kind of what you're signing up for so that you're not bombarded with phone calls and of telemarketers or mailers, with something that has nothing to do with what your original donation was about.
Absolutely.
Another item that they rate, which I thought was really interesting because I had never really thought of it this way, is a what's called a cost to raise. So the charity cost to raise $100. So kind of it goes in line with what their overhead is, but it's another way just to splice it. So how many marketing dollars does it take to raise $100 of program fees? So if it's $50 to raise $100, that's not quite efficient. So the Charity Watch, again, their rating system, they'll give an A to any organization that has a cost to raise $100 at 25 or less. So again, they seem to land on that. If it's only 25% that goes to marketing, then that's more efficient in there. And I think they've rated and kind of how they came up with this process is evaluating who are the best of the best. Like let's rate everybody. Let's look at everybody so that we can establish some benchmarks of which are doing it well and which need a little help still, and to just educate people to know that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't give. It's just, we want our eyes wide open of how to maximize time and dollars. And so I think that was really, really good. Another tip was they looked at how much do these organizations keep in their kind of stockpiles. So,
right.
because the whole part of giving, I think if we see a cause, we want to give to that immediately. We want the impact to be made immediately.
Absolutely.
We don't want it to go in some, stockpile where it doesn't get used for 5 years. And so they're very adamant of, at the most, having 3 years worth of funds in savings.
Right. And to mention that those are charitable organizations. So if you give to your church, your church will more than likely, they'll be transparent.
Yeah.
You want them to be transparent,
Yes, you
first
do.
of all.
Yes.
And second of all, is you want to give to a church that is giving out what is being taken in.
Right.
And they're not saving for the rainy day. They're
Right.
not saving because there's something important about that. You want your dollars to
You want them to be recycling
acting,
through,
right?
right? Because again, we need these initiatives. We need these programs to change our world.
Right.
And if they're sitting in some bank somewhere, they're not changing the world.
Well, and I think there's something right about that.
Yeah.
Is again, if we're trying to save for that rainy day, then nothing's being done, and then you want the generosity to keep coming.
Yeah.
And if you're stockpiling it won't.
It won't.
It
That's
just
right.
won't.
That's
because again, there's something that I don't understand about giving that makes no sense sometimes, but when that's rotating, that's really important. So if you are giving to a church,
think how I kind of classify, I want the organization I'm giving to have faith in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a sign of their faith. Are they so confident? Are they as confident as I am to support
That's a
them
great point.
in what they're doing that they're willing to put it on the line?
Absolutely.
Because,
yeah.
that's kind of what we're called to do. And I'm not just even talking from a religious point of view. To have faith, to know that more will come because what you're doing matters. And you're living on that line. And you're living boldly.
That's so
and you're
important.
not just constantly hedging. I mean, for the nonprofit world, the giving world, you kind of have to have this boldness to it to be impactful. And so I think it requires just that kind of... we say chutzpah on the show a lot, but this kind of chutzpah.
The chutzpah.
You know what that is.
Yeah.
I think because she's from Pittsburgh, everybody.
I think
that is
probably
a Yiddish
is.
word that comes
The
from Pittsburgh.
chutzpah.
When I said that like 5 shows ago, everyone's like, what is that?
That's good.
See, Michelle
That
knows.
is.
That makes me
I
feel
do.
good.
We're kindred spirits. Pittsburgh.
I know. You should give me a list of like the words from Pittsburgh that only we would know so I can continue to
Hey, Jens,
educate.
guys.
Yeah.
Yes. Jens.
Yes.
How Jens doing?
Is definitely a good one. But yeah, to your point, is just to have that kind of boldness in what they're doing.
Yeah, and
So.
you should not be ashamed for any of these organizations or churches or anything that you are giving your hard-earned cash to ask for them to be transparent. Is
They're
I want to be
supposed to be
transparent,
transparent.
and if they're not willing to do that, that is a red flag.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that this organization, which Charity Watch looks at, is do they even make public their financials, their audited financials, their tax form 990s? I mean, it can get very nitty gritty in how transparent certain charities are or are not. Because like in any financial statement, there are opportunities, and I don't think it's malicious, but there's ways for them to kind of hide. And what typically they tend to hide is maybe salaries or what's called joint costs. So the whole like marketing, telemarketing, mailer kind of segment of fundraising. Because, I think they want to put their best foot forward. I totally get that. But we need to know as the general public of where we're giving our funds that the maximization of our dollar is being utilized, that the most efficient way to run an organization is important because we work hard and we want anything we do to matter. We want it to have purpose. We want it, when it's tied to our story, we want it to be different. because, whenever we have hardship in our stories, if we can save one person for maybe having the breadth and depth of hardship we've had, it's worth it. And so all these little things matter. And so at least as we close up this generosity segment, which is probably my favorite one we've done all year because it's so important to me.
It is.
Because it's changed my life probably more than any other single factor. Because like you said, and I love this, is it was so helpful during the most significant periods of pain in my life. I had the only thing at times that kept me going was kind of like the joy set before you of what this pain could do to help others in similar situations down the road.
It's the only thing that will keep you.
Yeah. Because when it's about you and the world starts closing in, you just feel like, well, if it's just about me, I'm done. Like I give up. It's too hard. And people get to that point. But when it becomes not just about you, but what you can do in this time of pain and grief to keep going, and then you'll find other people will find you of going through the same thing, and you build each other up and you get each other through and you help each other get out of your pits. That's the, human element. We all go through suffering. We all go through periods of jubilee and of utter destruction.
Listen to that. That is so. If you think that you're the only one who's going through something, you are
That's
not.
Right. You are not alone.
You are not. And
That's right.
And God I know that this is not just about. God wants to meet us all where we are.
That's
and He wants to
right.
provide for us, whether that's through a person,
Right.
whether that's through an organization.
That's right.
And we all need each other.
That's
and
right.
in this time of just where we're coming out of COVID and now we're able to meet with each other, to have our eyes opened.
Yeah.
And again, giving to organizations is good, but sometimes it means giving to somebody on the street just because you have a feeling that you're supposed to do that. You're not going to understand what they're going to spend their money on. And
or
you're
your
gonna take a
neighbor that you've
risk.
never met before.
Right.
I mean, you listen to that discernment,
Absolutely.
that voice, that little gut voice, and saying, hey, take a second here.
Yeah.
Pause. This person's struggling.
And when you give, sometimes
Yeah.
it just means you're trusting. When you give that over,
Yeah.
you're trusting that that's going to be used for a right reason. And then the responsibility is on that person that you're giving it to.
That's right.
Whether it be somebody, and my husband was big on being in restaurants and just,
Yeah.
again, we were so relational. So he would get to know these people and we would go in and our bill would be like $30 and we'd come out and it'd be like $300 because it was Christmas and they had a story and we related to that story. And often it was something that was very similar in our lives.
Yeah.
And we felt that's the place that we need to give right now. And that is a good thing.
It is a
That
good
is a
thing.
good thing to just be aware.
I love it. I love it. So hopefully you find that helpful to kind of just at least put some process to it, put some tips around it, some tools around it. We'll put the link of this article from Charity Watch on our website. And again, find us on copytalkpodcast.com, our Instagram channel, our Facebook page, YouTube. I was telling Michelle when she was I was convincing her this morning to come. I'm like, and don't forget, it's on camera. And she's like, oh no,
I have to put
so you did
makeup
great.
on. Honestly, I kind of forgot.
So we wish you guys a great week. Join us next week. We're going to have a special Christmas episode, which I'm very excited for.
And April will be back, right?
Hopefully April will be back. If not, you're going to get the
maybe.
call.
Maybe. I'll be singing songs.
Well, thank you for coming today, and thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks.
This is intended for informational purposes only and not to be used as a primary basis for investment decisions. Consult your financial professional before making investment decisions. Shannon Ross is a registered representative and MBA of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse Financial offers securities and advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisories Incorporated, member FINRA and SIPC. Shannon is CEO and managing financial partner of Lighthouse Financial. Cambridge and Lighthouse Financial are not affiliated.